Excuse me. Good morning, everybody. I would like to call this meeting of the Development and Property Committee to order on Tuesday, November the 12th, 2024 at 9:30 a.m. As we gather today, we acknowledge on behalf of the County of Renfrew and our community that we are meeting on the traditional territory of the Amawini Algonquin people. We want to thank the Amawini people and express our respect and support for their rich history, and we are extremely grateful for their many and continued displays of friendship. We also thank all the generations of Indigenous peoples who have taken care of this land for thousands of years. Has roll call been taken, Evelyn?
Yes, thank you, Chair, and we have quorum.
Thank you. Are there any disclosures of pecuniary interest and the general nature thereof? Seeing none, then we'll move to the adoption of the minutes of October the 15th, 2024. Could I get a mover and a seconder? Moved by Councillor from Greater Madawaska, seconded by Councillor from Town of Arnprior. Any additions, corrections, or omissions? Seeing none, all in favor? And that's carried. Thank you. And this morning, we have a delegation from Ainsworth regarding our climate action plan, and I will ask Bruce Howarth to introduce our delegation, please.
Thank you, Chair. So with us today, I see we have Pascal Genevieve and Mark Brillian from Ainsworth. So they have been working on our climate action plan. They were the successful company who were awarded the RFP for looking at our greenhouse gas emissions. There's been several phases to this project, and you'll see some familiar faces from earlier presentations that Council has received. So they've been working with staff. We've tried to give them as much data as we have with regards to our operations and our buildings and our fleets, and they've taken that data, they've done inventories of what our current greenhouse gas emissions are looking like, and have developed this draft action plan to look at what we can do as a corporation to minimize our impact and minimize our greenhouse gas emissions. So we're very excited as this project gets closer to completion. What you'll see today is we'll call it a first draft of the final report. So the beginning of the end of the project. So it's the first draft of the proposed action plan. We do know that there are some tweaks that are going to be required to look at over the next couple of weeks, but what we hope to do and achieve is have that final report ready for County Council and then move forward with an implementation plan after that. So with that, I'll turn it over to perhaps Chair 2 Pascal. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And Pascal, please go ahead.
Thank you very much, Bruce, for the introduction. I'm very pleased to present to the Council. We've been working closely over the last weeks with Mark and his team and with Bruce. So let me just share my screen. Actually, I can't share my screen right now. I sent a request. Oh, see, I can now. All right. Do you all see my screen? Yeah. Okay. So as Bruce mentioned, this is a draft action plan, a very well advanced draft. So we'll remind of the objective of the mandates. We'll go very quickly through a summary of the greenhouse gas inventory that was already presented to the Council. Then we'll look at what we call the forecast of the greenhouse gas emission in a business as usual scenario. Then we'll propose targets based on what we've noticed, what targets have been set in municipalities and counties around Renfrew. And we'll have an overview of the action plan, and we looked at the projected greenhouse gas emissions for the future. So the objective and the mandate, we have completed the greenhouse gas emission inventory, which was already presented, as I mentioned, to the Council. We're in the phase of finalizing the action plan. We have listed the actions that were reviewed by the administration. We established how much they reduce the greenhouse gas emissions. We have assessed a budget for the majority of the actions, and we've done some forecasting. What remains to be done is reviewing targets, the proposed ones, and finalizing the action plan. I will go quickly over the greenhouse gas inventory. It was just to have a few numbers in the presentation. As you may recall, the inventory is spread into two parts. The corporate county greenhouse gas inventory, which is illustrated on this chart. What needs to remember is that the mobility is a bit more than half the emissions of the activities of the county itself, its vehicles. And the other half is mostly about the buildings, the greenhouse gas emissions from the buildings. And the remaining are the waste generated by the activity of the administration. Some places that generate more emission than others, and that's what this graph shows. All the details are providing into the report. The other half of the work is to map the community greenhouse gas emissions, which is much higher, obviously, than the emissions of the county administration. And in this chart, we see that the mobility is almost half the total emissions. And we have then energy consumption and other activities on the territory that emits greenhouse gas emissions, such as agriculture, industrial processes, and a little bit of also from the waste. So from that presentation, the task was to identify what will happen if no actions are set, if nothing is being done. This is what we call the business as usual scenario. So it's based on quite a few assumptions to be able to understand what could happen in the future if no real actions are put in place by the county. And based on the scenario, which is not a prediction, it's what we believe could happen based on some assumptions, the emissions from the county would increase, mostly due to the increase of population and the addition of the relevant services provided by the administration. And on the other side, the community emissions, we believe that they would tend to decrease, mostly due to the fact that there are policies in place at the federal level, at the provincial level, that help reducing greenhouse gas emissions, mostly for the transportation activities. The fact that internal combustion engine will be no more sold after 2035, for example, will push people to buy more electric cars independently of what is done by the county. But still, those reductions are not enough to reach what is expected at the level of the commitment of the province and the commitment of the country. This is in details the various projections. I will not go into every numbers, but you'll have all the information into the report. So once we have the business as usual scenario, when we go to propose targets to be able to support the fight against climate change at the right level of ambition. And to do that, we looked at what the other levels have committed to, and we remind the commitment from the federal government, which is to reach 40 to 45% emission reduction by 2030, with 2005 as the reference. And also, I don't know if I will read the question for later. And also the Ontario government has said it will achieve 37% reduction by 2030 and 80% by 2050 with respect to 1990 levels. Also, we looked at other cities such as Ottawa and also counties around the county of Renfrew. And we have mapped all their commitments depending on the year they set their target to. And also we mapped the baseline they refer to. And what we see is that they always set a target for the city and a target for the community that they mostly do so. And it varies significantly from one county to another. But still, we know there's a range of, for the county, 25 to 40%. 20 to 20, 25, 40%. And for the community, it varies even more. It could be from 6% to 30% by 2030. So there is a range of variety, but still it gives an order of magnitude of what the change are expected for both the community and the county. So we proposed greenhouse gas emission reduction targets for the county of Renfrew based not only on this review, but also on the plan that we proposed right after, which is a 20% reduction of greenhouse gas emissions from county activities by 2030, based on 2021 baseline, because it's the baseline that we have. And a net zero by 2050, which is mostly accepted in the target setting field. And for the community, it's a 20 to 25% reduction of greenhouse gas emissions based on for 2030, based on 2021. So we propose a range for this one, acknowledging that there may be a variety of decisions that would influence that setting. It depends on which actions are being retained ultimately. With respect to the action plan, we have detailed a variety of actions that are gathered in 4 categories for the county. We have actions for the buildings, so a lot of actions aiming at reducing the energy consumption and the natural gas consumption in the buildings. We have actions addressing the mobility so that we could lower the greenhouse emissions from the vehicles that the county owns or the vehicle that the employee use. Also, we looked at any measures to improve on the governance side and on the culture to increase awareness and to better make sure that it's embedded into the activities of the county. Then we derived some actions. I will not go through all the actions. You have a synthetic presentation that gives you, for each action, the level of reduction that it could be achieved in a scale of low, medium, high. Into the report and into the Excel file, we go into more details assessing how much each action could reduce in terms of greenhouse gas emissions, but we didn't want to flood you with too many numbers. Same for the cost. We have estimated the cost of the various actions. In the report, we go into more details. For some actions, we can really put a number of how much they will cost. I will not go through all the actions. I will answer any questions you will have on these actions in the question period. But as you see, we have detailed actions for all the categories that I mentioned. And for the community, we did the same exercise. We focused on mobility because, as you saw from the greenhouse gas inventory results, mobility accounts for almost 50% of the overall emissions. So there are quite a few actions that can be put in place. But also we looked at the buildings could be done for supporting greenhouse gas reductions of the buildings that are on the territory of the county. We also suggest actions on the industrial side. It's possible to help to support industrial organizations to decarbonize. There are many ways to do that, and informing them, helping them to get the right tools to connect them together, to work on those topics. It's something that the county could help with. Also, the residual matter is addressed, as well as actions on the agriculture and forestry side. Similarly, for the actions, we assessed the reductions they could bring and the cost. You will notice, for example, for the charging infrastructure, adding new charging infrastructure is obviously a good action, but it cannot be assessed in terms of greenhouse gas emissions. It helps people buying electric cars, but just putting a charging setup doesn't reduce emission by itself. It's an enabler. It enables the reductions. And same for the other types of actions. So I'll skip them and I'll answer any questions you may have into the discussion. So the last part was to do a projection of what would be the greenhouse gas emissions if we put in place these actions. Once again, there are assumptions behind that in terms of level of ambition that they would bring. But it gives an idea of where we could stand by 2030. We believe that all the action for the county would reduce the emissions by 19%. Which is why we suggested a 20% reduction target for 2030. And you have here the contribution of the various sector. You see the stationary combustion, which is the orange one. It's all about the natural gas consumption in the buildings. And we believe there is a lot what could be done on this side, helping reducing the natural gas consumption by being more efficient, optimizing the use of the buildings, and this could come ultimately with some cost savings too. Another view of, this is for the community. So we computed that for the community, we could reach a 21% reduction for by 2030. You see here a significant part of the reduction could come from the transportation sector by helping and enabling the citizens to have the good information to buy electric cars, to have the infrastructure around also that supports the use of electric cars could definitely be an added value. And it's not only about electric cars, there are other ways also optimizing the traffic, for example, and other solutions that could help reducing greenhouse gas emissions from the transportation sector. I don't know how much time I took, but I would like to open the floor for questions.
Thank you very much for that presentation, and I'll turn to the committee for any questions. Councillor from Township of McNabb-Braeside, and then Greater Madawaska.
Okay, thanks to Ainsworth, Pascal, and company for the presentation. I've got a few questions, but the first one is, could we clarify what the definition we're using of net zero is? I've seen it defined a number of ways. I think we just get clarification of what we mean exactly when we're talking about net zero. Thanks.
Thank you for the question. Indeed, it's a good one. So net zero refers to a state where all the efforts to reduce greenhouse gas emissions have been put in place, leaving what we call residual emissions, those emissions that are almost impossible to reduce. And so that means we have still some emissions, some greenhouse gas emissions, but those emissions then are compensated by some projects or actions that remove CO2 from the atmosphere. So we believe we'll be at a stage where there will be a lot of projects such as forestry projects, but more complex. The idea is that we'll be able to capture CO2 from the atmosphere and store them in a way that they are removed on the long term, and that activity will offset the residual emissions that we can't really put to zero.
So yes, sorry, supplementary.
Okay, thank you, Chair. So, okay, thank you for that answer. And just to clarify, are we talking about physical, actual removal for the residual out of the atmosphere in some fashion, or offsetting? You know, or putting money towards reducing somebody else's emissions. Is this actual physical removal? And what technology or form are we talking about with respect to removal, if that's the case?
Yeah, it is indeed actual removals. It's not anymore reduction at this point. It's not about reduction. It's really removal. So there are various technologies that could be used. There are one that are purely industrial. It's you may have seen those pictures of huge fans sucking air and removing CO2. Those technologies are pretty energy intensive. And with that CO2, it's possible to store it underground. It's possible also to put it in like in concrete in a way that it's stored over a long period of time. There are more let's say biotechnologies, which is about using biomass to generate energy and similarly capturing the CO2 and put it in underground. There are many ways to improve the soil capture also, because the soil that in which we grow food, it could capture more CO2 that it emits. So there are various technology, but it's really about capturing and removing CO2 of the atmosphere. At that point of time, it won't be anymore about reducing emissions.
Okay, thank you for that clarification. And just one last question on this part. Is there anything in the net zero paradigm that is related to increasing the carbon content of soils as a way to remove carbon from the atmosphere?
So, it's going to the border of my knowledge. For sure, carbon can be stored in soil much more efficiently and effectively than we do it through modern agriculture today. So there are a lot of projects that are aimed at increasing the carbon content in soils. So it's definitely doable. I'm not a soil expert, so I won't able to tell you in details, the sustainability of those activities, but for sure it's an opportunity. And what I know for sure is that it's possible to change the agriculture practice that we have today to improve the carbon capture in soil.
Thank you. Councillor from Greater Madawaska.
Thank you, and through you, Chair. You just mentioned in response to Councillor McKenzie's question that one of the things we can do is reforestation to offset to net zero. Renfrew County, and particularly my township, is almost 60% of Crown land now. So with all our forests in the county, what is our offset percentage now towards net zero?
Could you repeat, please, the percentage you mentioned? I didn't really understand what you said.
So you were going to use planting of trees and other things to bring us towards net zero, and as an idea. But with the amount of forests in Renfrew County already, and as I said, in my township, we're 60% Crown land. I'm just wondering, what is our offset with our forests now towards our net zero?
Mm-hmm. So, to be clear, I don't have a number for you to say. That's why the first action, and I'll try to come back to your question, but the first action is really to reduce emissions. Because today it's not possible to have enough carbon removal with the level of emission that we have. So that's why net zero is a target for 2050, leaving the time to reduce the emissions to the level that it will be possible to then remove CO2 from the atmosphere to offset that level. What could still be done is on the agricultural land, it's possible to combine agroforestry in a way that will also improve the quality of soil and add some trees. It's possible to add trees on urban areas. And so there are many ways that we can have the benefits of carbon capture through trees. But definitely the first action is to reduce our emissions to a level that it's possible then to offset with carbon sequestration.
Yeah, supplementary.
Yes, thank you, through you, Chair. Yes, so basically, what I'm trying to understand is, if we have a target that we need to get to, and planting of trees and forests are going to assist us to that level, if we have a target we have to get to, I'd like to know where we are now in relation to these greenhouse gases percentage to net zero. So if I say we have a target, where are we now considering all the trees and forests we have? Like, how do we get there?
Okay, thank you. I understand better your question. So the thing is that the net zero is, it needs additional effort to what we have presently. So it's great that you have those forest land on your territory. The thing is that today they are not counted because they are just there. And what is going to be counted in the future is additional efforts that are being put in place to increase the forest land, to increase the carbon capture. So the fact that today there is a significant amount of trees and forest on your territory is not accounted into the picture that was done into the greenhouse gas inventory. It's a wonderful thing that you have that, but what is counted towards net zero would be the additional efforts that will be put in place to remove the CO2.
Thank you, and through you, Chair. I guess what I'm getting at is, because we haven't factored that in yet, we quite possibly could be at net zero right now before doing all these initiatives. So that's where I'd like to get clarity as, where are we now? Thank you. I don't think that's a question you can answer today. I just wanted to put that out there. Thank you.
Mr. Howarth.
Thank you, Chair. Maybe I can just provide a couple of comments, because that is a question I asked early on as well. Is like, we have all these forests, all these green areas throughout our county and lots of crown lands. And so the answer I got was that the purpose of this project and meeting these target requirements are reductions, are looking at what our operations are, and then how can we, as a corporation, with what we are doing, reduce greenhouse gas emissions. So the factor of us living in an area that does have a lot of green space, or a lot of, we'll say, carbon taking in, things like our forests, that is not accounted for and is not part of the calculation that's being done. So just because we live in an area that does have a lot of forests, that does not input into the calculation to achieving net zero. So we're looking at what we have now. Here's, like, for example, we have this building. Just because we have trees around us does not make this building more greenhouse, climate friendly, for lack of a better term. So what this project is looking at is, here are our facilities, here is our operations, this is our current emission status. So there is a technical report that goes through what we have, what's our inventory, what our greenhouse gas emission inventory is, and then what can we do to improve on that. So the fact that we are doing some offsetting right now, or that is not helping us achieve that target. I hope that helped answer the question.
Councillor from Town of McNabb Braeside.
Okay, thank you, Chair. I can probably shed a little bit of light on this, and maybe Pascal could confirm. But it's a point Canada's made in international negotiations, that we've got all these forests taking CO2 out of the air. Should that not be counted towards our whole greenhouse gas inventory? And that was generally rejected in the international scene, because it's all about what's additional. So the forests that we have in Renfrew County right now are basically taken for granted. It is what it is, and the emission reductions conversations are taking the existing forestry at a base level of zero. So if we're emitting more CO2 into the atmosphere, that's the chunk of CO2 we're talking about. In order for forests to offset that in any fashion, we'd have to plant more forests and have a greater inventory of forests than we have currently, but I believe the forests that we have right now are not generally taken into any calculations. If we planted more, then that would be going towards net zero, is my understanding.
Pascal, did you want to comment on that? No.
It's exactly, I don't have anything to add. I have exactly the same understanding. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there, yes, Dana?
Good morning, and thank you for the presentation. I'd like to ask a little bit more around the community content that you had presented for us. And I noticed at the onset that you mentioned that there's a target of 20 to 25% reduction by 2030 and net zero by 2050. So if I lean into those, the 20 to 25, there were two main areas from a community perspective being looked at: mobility and material energy flows. And within mobility, some of those actions around zero fossil mobility leave me questioning how we can accomplish those. So I'd love your, if you can elaborate a little bit more on some of these actions. For example, charging infrastructure, smart traffic light management, promotion of public transportation, safe and functional infrastructure. I think all of us living in the county recognize the distance that we all travel, the climate that we face. In my own personal experience, I have had experience with electric vehicles that it's a very different lifestyle from needing to charge, and finding charge stations becomes a key part of your daily life. And then in winter, in cold climate, it becomes even more, and it becomes in some ways a little bit of a safety challenge. So I'd appreciate a little bit more if you can elaborate on how realistic you see us being able to achieve some of these high to medium impacts to achieve those goals that you feel that we need to lean into. Thank you.
Thank you for the question. Just as a reminder, I showed also the business as usual scenario, which indicate that there is already a trend through reducing greenhouse gas emissions that is put in place by other levels of power. So, but to come back to your point, indeed, there is behind the number a change in behavior, and you're right that change comes with challenges. Today, we've seen that electric vehicles have an increased range just in comparison with 5 to 6 years ago. We've seen also charging stations being more and more popular. You're right, they're not everywhere. They're still a limited number. So those challenges are partly technical, but also it's about changing habits. And that could be really helped with communication, sharing information, organizing events in which you have electrical vehicles proponents who come and showcase the vehicles so that citizens who had ideas, they could check with facts and try them and see how they could solve their issues with the winter, answer any of their questions. There are many options that are being available today. Most of the electric vehicles are suitable for daily commuting. But once again, the electric vehicles are not the only solution. There are other ways that could be put in place, other kind of transportation. I think a few weeks ago, there was a publication that a few of the municipalities of the county of Renfrew got together and got some financing, some fundings for car sharing initiative that they put in place. So those are great solutions and could be spread around to the rest of the county of Renfrew with the experience gained through that project.
Supplementary, or you, okay?
If I may ask a supplementary. Yes, thank you. Thank you for that. And I quite like, there are a number of municipalities around looking at public transportation options. So thank you. I like that idea as well. Just wondered, and I'm mindful that this might be out of the scope of your remit, but relative to the safety of electric vehicles as well. And certainly there's a number of challenges right now given the insurability of electric vehicles and their current status. I guess we're somewhat chasing when they would become generally available and safe and when we generally look to lean in. I didn't know if you had any commentary to add on that aspect. Thank you.
I have to admit it's a tricky question. I haven't seen in the numbers a significant issue overall with electric vehicles in terms of safety. So it's kind of difficult to answer that question that is on the edge of my knowledge.
Councillor from Town of Petawawa.
Thank you, Chair, and through you, and thank you for the report. There's a lot to take in here, and there's a lot of very good recommendations as well. And it looks like, as well, it's going to cost a lot of money. So if you were to take this report as a whole and look at Renfrew County and then say to us, let's say you were to prioritize some things that we should start with in terms of what would we get the most bang for our buck. So if you look at all of the recommendations for Renfrew County, obviously two of our biggest greenhouse gas users are the two long-term care homes. But is that where we should start? Or is it replacing the fleet? So when you look at all of these things, what is our number one priority to start with first? And where do we get the most bang for our buck?
I would look at it through the available funding that could reduce definitely the cost of a lot of the actions. We have identified in the plan, in the detailed Excel plan, the various governmental funding available to put in place some actions. And I think today there are a lot of grants for energy efficiency and energy substitution. So it's something that could definitely reduce the return on investment period. You have expert at Ainsworth that could really help you in putting a plan together more detailed. But the energy efficiency, reduction of greenhouse gas emissions through in buildings is getting a lot of support from various like on the federal side in particular through the Green Municipal Fund.
Yeah, if I can add to that, I guess for buildings, to look at, do the studies of the big buildings first with the largest gas use, and look at your equipment, how old it is, and build into the plan for replacement. So you don't replace a gas appliance for a gas appliance. Look at the heat pumps and get that plan in place to help with the life cycle cost analysis. I guess same thing with cars too, is get the infrastructure ready or your fleet ready, so that they're capable to switch to electric when the time comes.
Councillor from Greater Madawaska.
Thank you, and through you, Chair, the past two councillors just brought up a thought for me. Is this will be a staff question, is the number of how many fleet vehicles do we have right now, and do we, for each one, we would probably need a charging station for charging overnight. I'm not sure what charging stations cost, but we could times that by as many fleets. So I'm just trying to get an idea of what numbers we're looking at if we were to go to all of it.
Mr. Davis.
Thank you, Chair, and through you. It's actually a tough question because we have a number of fleets within our portfolio, whether it's a paramedic fleet, whether it's a public works fleet, and our own personal fleet vehicles for our D&P division and departments, for light-duty trucks, etc. Some of these vehicles will not be applicable for electrification moving forward. I can't see a snowplow at this time to be electric. That being said, we'd have to do a bit of a deep dive of your question for sure. It's interesting because we have applied for a grant for charging stations in the past through MTO, and we're hopefully getting a good. So we did apply for, I'll back up then. Thank you, CAO. We did apply for 6 charging stations, and we did receive confirmation as of today. that were successful for charging stations. And they can range from, and back to your questions, they can range from a cost of a low charge or a slow charge, trickle charge station of 10 to 15 to a high charge or high quick charging station up to $50,000 per station. And that's some of the questions we'd have to kind of go through, what we need for us at the staff level. But fortunately, we are successful. Back to another question about budgets. We still have to budget for those 6 stations because it's we have to cover some of that cost as part of the grant application. So a lot of questions moving forward, and this is the idea for even this climate action plan. It brings up what we have now as a base level, proposals or recommendations, and how to move forward. And what you'll see in that at Bruce's report, a recommendation to get a climate action plan committee together to review all the recommendations because there are a number of them and there's large implications, whether it's for budget and staffing, to have a committee or an ad hoc committee look at these recommendations to move forward. So I kind of danced around your question a little bit. We'll get back to you about the actual number of fleets, the numbers, and what would it take to electrify them all. Thank you, Chair.
Councillor from McNabb Braeside.
Thank you, Chair. Back to net zero for Pascal and finances. When we get to that point where we've reduced everything we can, and there's some greenhouse gas emissions that need to be neutralized, is there any working number right now? What the cost of removal would be per ton? That would obviously have some financial implications here, but if the point of being net zero involves paying for that removal for what we can't reduce, is there any numbers that we should be looking at per ton?
So we're talking a situation in 25 years from now about technologies that are emerging today. So actually, it's very difficult to put a number on those CO2 removal that we need to happen at that time. There are so many unknowns that it's almost impossible to do that. Sorry.
Thank you. Excuse me. Thank you very much, Pascal. I don't see any further questions, so I certainly appreciate your time this morning to highlight your report, and I'm sure we'll have to do more work at our level, but again, appreciate the presentation this morning. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair.
So at this point, we will move to the Development and Property Department report and start with Director Davis.
Thank you again, Chair, and good morning, committee members. Again, thank you very much for Mr. Bruce Howarth leading this project for the Climate Action Plan. We just had the delegation for, and the number of staff dealing with information gathering session of the Climate Action Plan, whether it's the real property division, the paramedics, the fleets from our operations divisions and departments. So thank you very much for the staff getting that information together. One information item in my director's report is the treasurer's report. If you have a PDF copy or a digital copy, it's page 33. This is the treasurer's report as of September 30th. You'll notice on page 37, I'll just highlight just the one number on page 37 of your committee package. We're at a surplus level right now of a little over $500,000. Again, we have the managers here to talk about any individual divisional questions you may have. But we're running a surplus mainly to do with our forestry division with the increased above our $180,000 revenue, and also for our Planning Act applications, a little increase from that. And each divisional item, you'll see some salary surpluses just the way it is for now. So I'll leave it at that, Chair, as information, and we do have the managers here for any direct questions.
Thank you, Mr. Davis. Are there any comments or questions? I just had one in regards to the Renfrew County Place property, and our year-to-date total is quite a bit higher than what was budgeted. Is there an explanation for that?
Thanks, Chair. So talking to our treasurer, it is a bit above level. That was a carryover from 2023 when we budgeted for a roof replacement, and we're working with the treasurer to making sure that's, I'm going to say budgeted, not budgeted for, but accounted for in 2024. Thanks, Chair.
Thank you for that. Any other questions? Seeing none, then we'll go back to Mr. Davis.
Thanks, Chair. We do have a resolution. The first resolution is the Roma delegation request resolution. I'll read the recommendation to put it on the floor. That the Development and Property Committee recommends that after a review of the current state of the development and property issues, staff submit delegation requests at the upcoming Rural Ontario Municipal Association Roma Conference that are consistent with the 2023-2026 County of Renfrew Strategic Plan and the 2024-2026 Economic Development Strategy, current initiatives that require further advocacy, and previous delegations that are addressing funding shortfalls, and that the chair of the standing committee along with the warden be designated to attend the delegation.
Thank you, Mr. Davis. You've heard the recommendation. Can I get a mover and a seconder, please? Moved by Councillor from Greater Madawaska, seconded by Councillor from Laurentian Valley. And more background, please.
Thank you, Chair. So this is typically we do this every time we have in front of Roma or AMO, and we typically have a number of requests. At this time, we don't have a specific request, but what we're looking for from this committee is direction to staff. If something comes up, we feel that does follow our strategic plan and different policies, we have the authority to put a delegation request into the ministry where applicable. So as long as we're consistent, you'll be aware of it once we do this, but right now, nothing specific, but just in case we do have something before the deadline of the delegation requests. So that's the background, Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Davis. Are there any comments or questions? Seeing none, then I will ask for a vote. All in favor? And that's carried. Thank you. Mr. Davis.
Thank you, Chair. Another exciting possibility for the County of Renfrew. We've talked about municipal services before, and before I go into the background and give the recommendation, what we're trying to do here is, again, thinking outside the box on our housing issues that we're facing the County of Renfrew and beyond. So I'll read the recommendation, Chair. That the Development and Property Committee directs staff to investigate the creation of a municipal services corporation for the construction of purpose-built affordable rental housing and for the purposes of development of a municipal-owned lands for workforce development housing.
Thank you, Mr. Davis. You've heard the recommendation. Do I have a mover and a seconder? Moved by Councillor from Town of McNabb-Braeside, seconded by Councillor from Horton. Background, please.
Thank you, Chair. I think this is a very opportune time to talk about this. Again, we've talked about Municipal Services Corporation for communal servicing in the past. We've talked about different ideas. And this is another, like you just mentioned, outside the box thinking how to increase our housing supply within the County of Renfrew. It's a very good timing because we completed the BCAs, the Building Condition Assessments for our Renfrew County Housing Corporation. We do have a renewal plan in place. We're going to renew these buildings as discussed at our asset management plan discussion back, I think, 2 Mondays ago. We're going to be spending a number of millions of dollars to renew Renfrew County Housing Corporation assets as one aspect. In the past, we brought together to you a number of issues or opportunities for modular homes. We've talked about doing site plans for Miramichi Lodge, Bonisher Manor, 450 O'Brien. This is another unique idea. What about if the county could look at doing the constructions ourselves? Again, you see in the committee package, I won't go through the pros and cons because we're just at the level of just investigating this forward. Why not do something ourselves? We have our Public Works Division. They have their own operation. They have the construction team that do their own builds for bridges and culverts and some portions of roads. Why not look at this opportunity as we move forward to have a construction team like Public Works to build houses? Bruce Howarth, we're doing parts and parcel of this already, and Bruce Howarth has already engaged the engineering firm of JP2G to look at the different lands for what would it take, and we could do this a step forward. So one of the first questions we asked is, can we do this legally as a corporation? And as you see in the report, section 11.1 of the Municipal Act, yes, we can through our spheres of jurisdiction. So we can do this. Other jurisdictions, one that we know of within Ontario, Northumberland County is doing something similar. City of Calgary is doing this also. And this is a great opportunity at least to look at it. I'm not going to say we're going to go move forward, but we need this opportunity and the direction from this committee to move forward to see if this is a possibility. And we could do good things because we have the assets, we have lands, we have the buildings. And why not try this? So again, this is a very high level. Let's look more into it further and see what it'd take and look really detailed of the pros and cons of upsetting or upfitting a municipal service corporation for construction of housing. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Davis. Comments or questions? Councillor from Town of Arnprior.
Thank you, Chair. Just a thought, once this corporation is built, and yes, we have a new building, will that then come under the Renfrew County? You'll pass it off to them to be part of that portfolio?
Mr. Davis.
As part of the design, and that's what we have to talk about further, and that's the further investigation. So the Municipal Services Corporation we're talking about is outside RCHC. It's a separate organization. It could add to our assets at RCHC, but typically no. It's going to be a standalone kind of operation.
Supplementary?
I'm visioning this. Who's going to pay for this? I see the Renfrew County Housing, that's us, and we're looking after it. But this is a new identity with maintenance, snow, all this kind of stuff. Who pays for that? Or how?
So Chair, just to kind of back up a little bit. So the Municipal Services Corporation, what we're talking about in this kind of resolution is this organization would build the units, the housing units. And in some situations, they'd be given back to RCHC as units, and then we typically have our own maintenance staff, our contract for snow removal. This is talking about straight building new units for workforce and for some of our low-income people in Renfrew County.
Councillor from Town of Petawawa.
Thank you, Chair, and through you, I guess anything is worth investigating, but it seems like a massive undertaking, especially in terms of the startup costs. And I don't know if it's fair to compare us to the City of Calgary. They have quite a few more resources than we would have. But I'd be interested in knowing what Northumberland has done and how they got it started and how it's been rolling out. But keeping in mind that a lot of government entities have tried this sort of thing in the past, including a couple large government entities that are close to us here, who used to have this type of thing in place, but found that it was much cheaper to contract a lot of this sort of thing out. But anything is worth investigating, and as I said, I'd like to see what Northumberland is doing.
Councillor from McNabb Braeside.
Okay, thank you, Chair. And I think my first comment is the report's very well laid out. It looks at a lot of the pros and cons, and we really appreciate that. And as Mr. Davis says, it's a big undertaking, and this is just the initial stages. And as my colleague from Petawawa mentioned, we certainly need to learn from something like Northumberland, which is closer to our demographics of our jurisdiction, see what their challenges were. So Councillor from Arnprior sort of asked the same question that I had, and I've got a bit of a clarification here. So we're talking about building these units, and some of them would go to Renfrew County housing corporations, and I assume that the other ones would just be sold as something more affordable, if we're using that term. Affordable probably means below market, and as the CEO mentioned a couple of meetings ago, it's a big challenge to work with developers. Understandably, it's not a criticism. I mean, they're in the open market and free enterprise system. It's a big challenge to work with developers to come up with some formula that works for them and their corporate goals and still meets an end product that would be in the affordable category. And this model that we're just beginning to explore, should this committee direct as such, works towards creating some sort of affordable housing inventory for those that can't afford full market for a home to take advantage of. One question of clarification then is, if this municipal service corporation builds, are some of these then just going to be sold and other ones we're going to rent out? Is that the differentiation here? And if so, I've got a follow-up question.
Mr. Kelly.
Asking the director if he minds. Okay, thank you for the question. So let's go back to basics on this one a little bit. What's being contemplated? So as you heard at County Council, at the special council meeting last, whatever it was, 2 weeks ago now, the County of Renfrew is about to embark on a several-year, multi-year renewal and rehabilitation process with our Renfrew County Housing Corporation stock. We talked about phase one being a series of 24 units in Pembroke, building new, transitioning those people into the new, and then selling off and getting somebody to develop that property. So if we take that approach, that we will be on a renewal strategy of our own housing units for a series of 1 to 10 years or longer, we also anticipate in the next several months having a series of ready-built or ready-to-build plans from the province and or the feds, or even our own designs. What's being contemplated is a corporation, much like a public utility, where we could employ a number of laborers or contractors of ourselves that allow us the flexibility and nimbleness to build our own stock back up rather than going out to open market. Now, Councillor Service's points are definitely noted, and I understand that. As company towns were built in this county years and years ago, we've seen that happen. But we're not suggesting quite like that. What we're suggesting is that our own workforce, or we develop our own workforce to develop our own housing at the moment. Now, there is an opportunity that as we're developing our lands, our municipal-owned lands that are bequeathed to us or are given to the county to develop housing, that additional housing for workforce could be developed at the same time they're developing affordable housing to rejuvenate the housing corporations and lands. So what this allows is the corporation as a separate entity to have that nimbleness, separate and distinct from the council, because it has its own CEO and board, that allows it to research its own grants, its own sources of funding, and allows it to buy and sell lands and municipal lands and to market those lands outside of being encumbered by council. Council gives a broader scope of the corporation in terms of reference, and the corporation goes off and does the bidding of council and for the community to develop housing. That's the intent of this. The intent is not to compete with local developers in the affordable housing space. The intent is to rebuild our own properties or our own assets, and to perhaps even use the workforce to renovate our current buildings if they just require renovation, augmenting or complementing perhaps some other private sectors that we also need to tender with, and to look at our lands that we have determined that are surplus, and your municipal lands, if the municipalities want us to do that for them, to develop workforce housing, perhaps in concert with private individuals. So what we're just saying is take the real estate division, if you will, in terms of surplus land inventory, and give it to a new municipal services corporation that we have arm's length relationship with to go forth and develop and build. No one else is doing it in our space. I feel we need to get in that space and do it ourselves because no one else is doing it. And this is what the Municipal Services Corporation will allow us to do. Thank you, Chair.
Supplementary?
Okay, thank you for that clarification. So if I understand it correctly, there's looking at the Renfrew County Housing Corporation and the challenges there with the capital needs that we talked about recently and made that decision. So there's the rejuvenation of our existing housing stock this Municipal Service Corporation would address in some fashion by housing a workforce that would help us rejuvenate our own existing inventory, and in addition to that, create some more inventory, if I understand that correctly. But what I'm trying to get a grip around before we get going on this is any part of this municipal corporation designed to build houses that we would sell? Or is it designed to help rejuvenate our existing, which we've already basically decided to go down that road, Nelson, and on new lands, build some more inventory that I'm assuming we'd be renting out at affordable rates. That makes sense to me. Building it to sell doesn't. I just want to clarify that.
Mr. Kelly?
Thank you, and thank you for the question. So through you, it allows for that to happen for certain, that we could build to sell. But let me be a little more clear. A corporation like this requires both seed money and monies to continue operation. So if we use our lands as an asset to provide to the corporation, to the new corporation, who makes money selling those lands for development of for-profit, that will feed the dollars into the Municipal Services Corporation to allow it to build more nonprofit housing in our portfolio. See where I'm going with that? We're not going to be in the market of building homes and selling them for market value. That's not the intention of this. That's a private sector deal. What we're looking at doing is building our own inventory and building inventory that the Housing Corporation could add as additional if that's the purposes of if council wants more additional units to operate as RCHC. Or if the RCHC board wants to operate more. It's not to compete with the private market. We're not building Lapine apartments in Renfrew. That's what they do. We're in the whole different side of things. We're building, the corporation would be building workforce housing basically, or housing that is affordable to rent. And let me be clear with RCHC, there's nothing with the RCHC board that doesn't say we can't start renting out our units right now at market rate. We could go, RCHC board could go and buy 10 houses right now and charge market rate. I mean, that's well within our purview to do that. We just haven't done that yet, right? So these are things that increases the housing supply for the area that isn't being met by the private sector at the moment.
And one final comment?
Yes, okay, that's somewhat more clear. My concern is that if we build new homes that are more affordable and sell them to somebody, they could easily be flipped and resold at market rates, in which case we would be competing with the private sector. So there'd have, I have a lot of questions on that aspect of it. That doesn't affect my my support of this recommendation to pursue that, but I just want to make clear that we're going towards more rental units at more affordable rates, because as we all know, that's still a big hole, and we have a long waiting list for people that are looking for housing, including some of the homeless.
Mr. Kelly.
Yeah, one last comment to that question, and well, it wasn't really a question, but I'll answer that because this is kind of into the weeds as the business development or the business case gets developed by Mr. Davis. In other examples, when that occurs, in other examples where land is developed or a house is built, let's say at an affordable level or through the government process, and is given to or sold to an individual who then flips it, quote unquote, or stays in it for a short period of time and then sells it for a profit. There are many examples where that portion of profit or gain is shared with the municipality. So think of this as, again, industrial land, industrial parks that many of you have already. Right? This is treating housing like an industrial park, where there are agreements in place that you sell industrial park land at a very affordable rate per acre. But the agreement on the back end is that you either must develop this land within a certain amount of years or you sell it back to the municipality at cost, or if you term to flip it, then you share 50% or a portion back to the municipality because you've made profit, and those profits come back to the municipality, or a portion of those profits come back to the municipality that then fuel further activities. So again, this is getting into the weeds on all those things, how they get worked out, but it's not meant for the municipality, the county, or your own municipality to find 10 acres of land, to sell it to Mr. ABC, who's then going to flip it and sell it for twice as much without us getting some type of return on that or reward for that. So again, those are into the weeds a bit, but there's a lot of nuance to all of this setting up a corporation, how it rolls out to for the safety, security of the corporation, and for the benefit of the corporation as well.
Councillor from Laurentian Valley, you had a question.
Thank you, Chair. I think it's a great idea. There's still a lot of questions to be determined, but one of my questions is, in terms of staffing, within the umbrella of the county right now, how many employees do you foresee maybe for the setup, and how many more additional employees would you need to carry on? And I know it's all on a plan to be built, and I'm sure you're going to start off small and whatever, but we have a construction season as well, so just those type of things, curious as to what you may have available.
Thank you, Chair, and through you. So again, we're very, very high level at this stage. To talk about the number of staffing, what we require, that will be the build out, that will be the proposal if we do move forward after we do the review of Northumberland County. It can range from a minimal amount of, you know what, I don't want to say a number because it may be stuck to it. It is very, very early to answer those questions, and I don't want to kind of pigeonhole us in answering that question. We will start small if this is approved and move forward. We'll look at our RCHC assets first and foremost, and I'm going to leave it to answer your question without a direct answer.
Councillor from Greater Madawaska.
Thank you, and through you, Chair. Just getting back to the recommendation that this is direct staff to investigate the creation of this. I think once staff gets a handle on it and understanding, a lot more of these questions can be answered. And now that these questions have been asked, the staff will take those into consideration when they're investigating this, and they'll come back to us with a plan of whether this is viable or not. And it may not be, or it might be, but at this point, the recommendation is just giving them direction to investigate this. Thank you.
Thank you. And Councillor from Township of Hort.
Thank you, and through you, Chair. Fantastic initiative, and I like the different look towards it. If I may, was there consideration given, I'll back up for a moment, the county-run construction business sticks in is a challenge. I fear that doing that would both create a workforce within the county that is almost in competition with local construction companies, and the career path of a individual within a township as opposed to within a construction company is very different. And I wonder if within the development of these ideas, Was there any consideration to partnering or looking for collaboration with many of the local existing construction companies as opposed to creating the county's run construction business?
Mr. Davis.
Thank you, Chair, and through you, and a great question. And that was part of our Housing Summit initiative. So when we had the Housing Summit, I'm going to say back in April, we had an expression of interest out to the developers, and we're within that expression of interest. We said the County of Renfrew has dozens of parcels of land. How can we partner with a developer to do new development? And while we had good submissions, it wasn't enough to move forward on them at this time. So we sort of partnered already. We put that expression of interest out. I think we as a staff level need to move forward to say, what can we go beyond just an expression of interest?
Thank you, and I just would like to weigh in a little bit myself. I think this is a great initiative. I will certainly be supporting it, because I do have some experience in having an internal construction team from my former occupation with the school board, where we had a construction team that did a lot of the renovations in properties. And just to speak to the workforce part of it, we also had pre-qualified a number of contractors, so if we needed extra labor support, we could just call from a pre-qualified firm. I also wanted to address the point that my colleague from Horton raised about competition with some of the construction companies and developers. When we had the forum in Renfrew in the spring, they made it very, very clear that for them to build affordable units, because they don't have the economy of scale that a city does, they need more upfront money for that capital investment, because the recovery of that build takes place over a number of years, and it's not viable for them to do it unless they have more of those upfront capital funds. So having the county take the lead on this, to me, is certainly worth investigating, because I do believe it can work. Any other comments? Seeing none, then I'll call a vote. All in favor? That's any opposed? Noted. And that's carried. Thank you. And that brings us to our Economic Development Division report, and Ms. Markwitt.
Thank you, Chair, and good morning, everyone. So first up on the report is the Municipal Agriculture Economic Development and Planning Forum that was held last month. So just a bit of a recap on the numbers. We drew in 122 registered delegates over the course of 2.5 days from rural Ontario, representing municipal and provincial governments, regional agricultural organizations, financial supporters, farm operators, and other stakeholders. So we did hold a welcome reception on the evening of October 22nd, and then on the 23rd was a bus tour to various agricultural sites across the county, and then a dinner back at the Best Western that evening. And then on the Thursday, October 24th, was a full forum day with case studies, panels, and presentations. We did do a bit of a survey following the event, so response rate was good, and everyone who did attend the event felt that there was a lot of value in that, in learning. It was also great because we had a number of attendees who attended for the very first time. They had never attended a forum before, so it was nice that we were able to attract approximately almost close to half of them being new, so they were new, coming to Renfrew County for the first time for the forum, so that was a positive. And then you'll see just a couple of other anecdotal quotes from the survey response there. Item number 2 is the Rural Changemakers program. So this is a program being delivered by the Rural Ontario Institute, and Renfrew County is partnering with the Renfrew County Community Futures Development Corporation to be a partner on this. And we have confirmed that there are 4 youth from Renfrew County participating in this program. So we met our target outreach. There was a virtual session held on October 16th just to welcome everyone, and youth are now entering into a learning lab until the end of December, and then they will go into community projects in the new year. And we're just waiting on a release from the Rural Ontario Institute so we can let everyone know who the 4 individuals are from Renfrew County. And we're expecting that to be released in the next couple of weeks. Number 3 on the report is just Taste of the Valley series. So we held the 4th event within the regular market season on October 19th in Cobden. As we all know, Cobden is usually our biggest event through the series. It's kind of the last of the in-season produce and products. So we had well over 5,500 visitors, more close to 6,000 visitors that attended that day, and we had a record number of 140 vendors participating. We're to the point where we have pretty much taken up all the space that we can at the Cobden Agricultural Society in Whitewater region. So we're not going to be able to grow that event much bigger unless we get more land given to us. But that event, as we know, is kind of the big last hurrah of the in-market season. And then we will have an event, our holiday season, coming up on December 16th in Renfrew. And we just want to give a shout out to our host municipalities this year. Townships of Madawaska Valley, Killu, Haggerty, Richards, the town of Petawawa, and of course Whitewater Region for being our partners for this year. And then the town of Renfrew, who's partnering with us for the holiday edition. Under community outreach and engagement, item number 4, the Economic Development Division was with the HR department at the Best Places to Work Career and Training Expo in Ottawa on October 17th. And so that was to promote Renfrew County as a place to work and play, as well as promoting positions within the corporation that are available. And then on October 30th, our economic development team went on a bit of a roadshow with the Renfrew County Community Futures Development Corporation and the Business Development Bank of Canada. And this is something that we've done previously in the past, but we're really trying to make a concerted effort to do this more as part of our strategic planning priority and promoting services to the business community, including services about what we do at economic development. And so we visited with Throttle Power Sports, which has a location in Elmont as well as in Pembroke, Convergence Design Services in Arnprior, and Calabogie Motorsports track in Greater Madawaska Township. And that concludes my ACDEV report.
Thank you, Ms. Markwitz. So we'll go back to information item number 1, the Municipal Agriculture Economic Development and Planning Forum. Comments, questions? Once again, I just want to thank Mr. Davis and Ms. Markwitz and the whole team of Property and Development for putting together such an excellent forum, and certainly very, very well attended, and feedback from some of those individuals from outside of the County of Renfrew were very, very impressed with how well things were organized and kept on schedule. And certainly they enjoyed a lot of the local flavors as well. Oh, sorry. Councillor from the town of Laurentian Valley.
Thank you, Chair. Just to support your comments, our Economic Development Officer attended and shared a lot of information about how grateful he was that he did attend and said it was just an excellent day. Thank you.
Thank you for that. So moving to information item number 2 is the Rural Change Makers Program. Another very interesting program. And these are, just for clarification, these are businesses now that these individuals are planning to start up, or are they already working businesses?
Thanks for the question. So these aren't actually businesses, they are individuals from the community. So they all, as far as I know, have full-time jobs, but they're doing this program as a learning opportunity to get more education and real-world experience in terms of developing community development projects or becoming future economic development leaders or community development leaders. So the idea is they provide, the ROI provides training on kind of community development initiatives, and then the youth are worked off into groups, and then they develop projects within the community as an example of projects they could do in the future.
Excellent, thank you for that. Any other comments, questions on item number 2? Seeing none, item number 3 is the Taste of the Valley series, and Councillor from Greater Madawaska.
Thank you, and through you, Chair. It's most likely my mistake, but I think I heard you say that the holiday edition is going to be December 16th, but it's written here December 14th. I perhaps misheard you, but I just want to clarify which date.
Ms. Margaret?
You are correct. In the report is December 14th. I misspoke, so thank you for catching that.
Any other comments on item 3? Seeing none, item number 4 is the community outreach and engagement. Comments, questions? Seeing none, then we will move on to the Ottawa Valley Tourist Association report, and back to Ms. Marquardt.
Thank you. Item number 1 is just an update on the municipal accommodation tax. So we have received draft agreements from the City of Pembroke as well as the town of Petawawa, and they were presented to the OVTA Board of Directors last week, and those have been accepted. So we're just moving forward with those communities now to finalize that information. And just as a reminder, the projected annual combined MAT revenues shared with the OVTA from both communities is approximately just under $300,000. So that is equating to just under $200,000 from the City of Pembroke and approximately $100,000 from the town of Petawawa. And again, those revenues are projected, so we don't really know what the full final amounts are going to be until those dollars start being collected. Under item number 2, Small Business Month Workshop. So the OVTA delivered a workshop as part of Enterprise Renfrew County Small Business Month in Greater Madawaska Township on October 7th. And it was about collaborating to elevate strategic co-marketing for growth. And that was delivered by our tourism digital officer, Aaron, as well as Ryan attended as well. And we had 18 participants attend that workshop. Item number 3 is the Travel Trade Partnership Familiarization Tour that Ryan Gilbertson, Tourism Development Officer, participated in on October 21st and 22nd. And that was an internal FAM with some of our travel trade partners across Renfrew County and Lanark County and Haliburton and Hastings counties. And the tour focused on visiting with the number of partners within the partnership to help businesses learn about each other, develop new partnerships, and experiential product development. And they went to a number of businesses, as you can see in Renfrew County, as well as a few in Lanark County. And then a second familiarization tour is being planned for early spring, which will highlight the partners in Haliburton and Hastings County. Item number 4 is just sharing of a reel from a recent Instagram influencer partnership done with the town of Petawawa. And that was hosting Luika Zigumis from Ottawa, and she attended the Pints and Gourds event and the Farm to Trail event and produced some nice little videos through her Instagram account. Item number 5 is just a reminder about the fall workshop series that kicked off at the end of October for tourism operators and anyone in the tourism industry. So there were 2 workshops that have already taken place that focused on using AI and increasing your online presence. And then we've got 2 more coming up, one tomorrow and one next week on the anatomy of an ad and sustainable and regenerative tourism. And registration in advance is required, and it's a really affordable $10 per person per workshop to attend. And then item number 6 is just to let everyone know we have produced a Renfrew County food guide. So this was done in collaboration with Economic Development and the OVTA. And this is to highlight local food producers, farms, farm gate stands, farmers markets, and those types of producers that sell directly to consumers. So the guide, which a link is included in the report, includes a number of products and meats and preserves and baked goods, as well as recipes from local producers. And I will end there before going to the resolution.
Thank you, Ms. Marquardt. So going back to information item number 1, the municipal accommodation tax update. Comments, questions? Yes, Councillor from Laurentian Valley.
Thank you, Chair. And to Melissa, could you explain a little bit more about the funds generated from the municipal tax for the city and Petawawa? Those funds are, and yet you've still got the Ottawa Valley Tourist Association. So are the funds split some in 3 ways, in 2 ways? And what are the restrictions on the spending of those funds? Thank you.
Great question. So I'll provide a bit of a refresher. So the municipal accommodation tax is a legislated act by the Government of Ontario, and it allows a municipality to implement a tax on roofed accommodations within their local municipality. If implemented, the legislation states that those funds have to be shared a minimum 50% with an eligible tourism entity. So an eligible tourism entity could be a destination marketing organization like the OVTA that has an established, defined role in promoting tourism and developing tourism. It could be also an organization that has a tourism mandate. So in some communities, particularly in rural communities, destination marketing organizations don't always exist. So sometimes that is a chamber of commerce that has a tourism mandate, or another organization that has a tourism mandate. And then those funds that are collected by the municipality have to be shared with that eligible tourism entity that's identified by the municipality. In examples where there is no identified tourism entity, there has been examples where the municipality have created, kind of like what we were previously talking about, a municipal services corporation, where they would develop a standalone organization that would be identified as that eligible tourism entity, and they would receive that portion of those funds. The funds that are provided to an eligible tourism entity have to be spent on tourism marketing, promotion, and development. The funds that are retained by the municipality can basically be spent any way the municipality would like. However, there is many examples, and what most municipalities do that retain those funds, they take those dollars to reinvest back into tourism, into their local community. So that could be for tourism marketing, product development, it could be recreation activities, anything that basically goes to promote tourism within the local community. That's where most of municipal accommodation tax funds are being spent. However, when it comes to the municipal funds, there's no legislated rules or anything about how those funds to be spent. So technically, a municipality could spend those funds on roads, they could spend it on staffing, they could spend it on anything they want. However, the portion of dollars that go towards the eligible tourism entity, it's clearly defined that it has to be spent on tourism promotion. So the funds are split basically in 2. So with the City of Pembroke, as well as with the Town of Petawawa, they have chosen to identify the OVTA as the eligible tourism entity. For most reasons is that we are the experienced ones within Renfrew County. This is what we've been doing for 70+ years now. We are in the middle of, we'll be working with those 2 communities to develop marketing plans and development plans about how those funds are going to be spent. And then what the municipalities, in terms of Pembroke and Petawawa, are doing those funds, that's out of our purview, so we have not asked those questions. But we do know just in conversations with those communities that those dollars will be reinvested back into recreation and tourism in those communities.
Thank you.
Any other comments, questions? Just to follow up on Councillor from Laurentian Valley. So the monies that come from those 2 municipalities that collect the MAT tax, those monies that come back to the county, do they have to be spent in those 2 communities, or can that be anywhere in Renfrew County?
Great question, and I just want to clarify that there are no funds coming back to the county. All of the funds that are shared with the OVTA only go to the OVTA. So I know that there's been some comments made recently publicly, but the County of Renfrew is not receiving any portion of these funds. It is through the OVTA and the municipality that have that agreement. And so for those funds, yes, it's clearly defined in our agreement that we have to, those funds that are collected by a community have to be spent on that community. So we will be developing programs using the funds that are shared with us from the City of Pembroke to promote and develop tourism activities within the City of Pembroke, and then similarly with the Town of Petawawa. There will be instances within those agreements and within the marketing plans and programs we develop that there will be opportunities to potentially leverage some of those community programs and marketing campaigns with what is happening broadly throughout Renfrew County. So for example, when we're developing packaging and experiential tourism packages, there is a desire for tourism operators within those communities to partner with other communities throughout the Ottawa Valley. So consider an overnight accommodation stay and play package in the city of Pembroke that includes accommodations at the city of Pembroke, but may include adventure packages to go rafting on the Ottawa River. It may include to go to a local museum. It may go to have another experience at another place outside of Renfrew County. So there will be opportunities where dollars will be able to be leveraged and programs will be able to be leveraged around that, but predominantly the dollars need to be spent within those communities where they are being collected.
Thank you for that clarification and reminding me that those dollars don't come back to the county. So item number 2 is the Small Business Month Workshop. Comments, questions? Item number 3 is the Travel Trade Partnership Familiarization Tour. Questions, comments? Item number Item number 4 is the Instagram Influencer Partnership. Item number 5 is the Fall Workshop Series. And item number 6 is the Renfrew County Food Guide. Councillor from Township of Horton.
Thank you. And through you, fantastic guide. I appreciate all of the information in it. And one of the things that had caught my eye was the map at the very end relative to the tap and cork route. Wondered if, for consideration for future versions, if there may be a map for various other producers and farms. Being mindful to the breadth of the Ottawa Valley, a map showing where some of them may be at the onset would be well received, as I'm sure that last map on the last page is as well. But again, great information. Thank you for producing it. Thank you.
Ms. Markwood, did you have a response?
Yes, thank you, and thank you for those comments. Yeah, this was our first kick at the can for this one. So because it's a living document, we aren't doing printed versions. It's a kind of a print on demand, but we're actually looking to develop it into a little bit more online version. So looking at an interactive map, so that we're not continuously having to update a paper map, but and working along our GIS to do some storyboard mapping along that. So thank you for the feedback.
And Councillor from Town of Arnprior.
Thank you, Chair. Excuse me. In that it's a living document, if people still or businesses still want to be part of your food guide, can they get a hold of you to bring it in? Thanks.
Another great question. Yes, there is no cost for any businesses to be involved, and if there are producers that want to be involved, they just have to send us an email and we'll get them added. Thanks.
Great initiative and very, very well done. Any other comments? Seeing none, then I'll go back to you, Ms. Markwood, for resolutions.
I'll read the recommendation that the Development and Property Committee recommends that County Council support the Ottawa Valley Tourist Association's request that Statistics Canada reinstate tourism data reporting at the census level for communities in Ontario.
Thank you for that. Do I have a mover and a seconder? Moved by Councillor from Greater Madawaska, seconded by Councillor from Town of Arnprior, and more background, please.
Yeah, so everyone is aware that as of 2016, Statistics Canada stopped providing tourism data at the census level. So this is why we have not been able to provide concrete reports since 2016 about the number of visitors that come to the region, what they're coming for, the activities, the spending levels, where they're coming from, and that type of thing. There's been a lot of data reports and data programs developed that provide a lot of great information, but it stops at the regional tourism level. So think about the Ontario's Highlands tourism level, which does include Renfrew County as well as Hastings and Lanark and Haliburton and other communities, but we don't get that individual breakdown. And it is rather a challenge for us as smaller communities in order to be able to make informed decision, to be able to share information with potential investors, developers, multiple businesses that want to invest in Renfrew County. And so this was a conversation held at last week's board meeting. And the board made a resolution that we are going to go on a letter writing campaign and try and do what we can to work with our partners and advocate for better tourism data reporting at the census level being at the county level. And so a resolution was made that we are going to be sending a letter to the Tourism Industry Association of Ontario looking for their support. And it was brought up by our county councillor members at the table, by councillor from Greater Madawaska, as well as North Algonquin Wilberforce, that there could be an opportunity for county council to support this request by either asking for a delegation with a federal minister at a future opportunity or at another opportunity that may come up. And so that's where we're at today with this request for support.
Thank you. Are there any comments, questions? Yes, Councillor from Greater Madawaska.
Thank you, and through you, Chair. So in the background and the explanation, it appears that they are collecting this data, and they have the data, but it's just not getting filtered out. Is that correct?
That is correct from our understanding, yes.
Thank you.
Any other questions or comments? Seeing none, I'll call the vote. All in favor? And that's carried. And then moving on to our Enterprise Renfrew County report, and once again, Ms. Markwood.
Thank you, Chair. So just a report on the activities from Small Business Month in October. So Enterprise Renfrew County delivered a series of virtual and in-person workshops. We had a total of 103 registrants attend 4 in-person events in Barry's Bay, Calabogie, Cobden, and Petawawa. And then an additional 48 participants attended the virtual webinar on the topic of adaptive marketing. And we just want to acknowledge the support from the Federal Economic Development Agency for Southern Ontario, as well as a number of our municipalities who help support on the delivery of these programs. So thanks everyone for your assistance and support. Item number 2 is just an update on some upcoming workshops and events. So this week is a content creation workshop being done in partnership with Renfrew County Community Futures Development Corporation and the town of Arnprior, and that event is sold out. And then on November 19th and 26th is a 2-part virtual series on mastering the essential steps of sales. And that's being delivered, I said, on November 19th and 26th. And the link is there if anybody would still like to register. And that concludes my ERC report.
Thank you, Ms. Markwood. Going back to information item number 1, the Small Business Month. Comments, questions? Item number 2 is upcoming workshops and events. And I see no comments or questions, so we will move to the Real Estate Division report. And we have with us this morning Mr. Lazarus, who's... Forestry first, Chair. Oh, I am sorry. Yes, we have Forestry first. My apologies. And Ms. Rose.
Thank you, Chair. The first information item of the Forestry report is just some communication updates. I was invited to deliver a presentation on forestry and related careers to a grade 9 class at Opeongo High School on October 10th, and a keynote address to 80 high school young women attending a Jill of All Trades event at Algonquin College on October 25th. With the support of Forest Ontario, we brought 30 students from Opeongo High School to the Beachburg track to look at our recent harvest activities there on October 30th, and then followed by a guided tour of Laverne Heidemann and Sons Mill. That went over really well, actually, mostly grade 9 students, and several of them did express interest in pursuing careers in forestry, so time well spent. Item C is just an update about the Shawwoods Outdoor Education Center. Myself and Chair Brose attended the meeting on October 17th. The center is definitely looking forward to resuming on-site visits as soon as, well, now that buses are up and running again. And just some information there that, like every year, there is significant bus subsidies to get students to the site. Those are provided by private and corporate donations and are available to all local school boards. Item D, Myself and some foresters from United Counties of Stormont, Dundas, and Glengarry, and Prescott Russell, and the Ontario Woodlot Association met with species at risk staff from the Ministry of Environment, Conservation and Parks on November 6th. And that was to discuss that potential exemption we're still waiting to hear about for black ash protection during sustainable forest management activities on private land. Just the outcome of that meeting is that that exemption is still being considered. No timeline was given. We did provide input on the impacts of there not being an exemption, and also provided wording on what we hoped to see in a potential exemption. Information item number 2 is just some harvest and renewal updates from the Renfrew County Forest for our 2024 harvest operations. Operations are now actually, harvesting is complete at Petsnick Lake. The haul is just going to wait until the road dries up a bit, and harvest is underway again at Ruby Tract. Item B is just some updates for you. The 2025 tree plant quotations were requested, and we did receive quotes from 4 different companies, which was great to see the interest in completing this work on the Renfrew County Forest. So that's for the 42,000 trees that will be planted at Beechburg Tract in spring 2025. And the quotation has been awarded to Heritage Reforestation in Waltham, Quebec. And that concludes my report. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Ms. Rose. So we'll go back to information item number 1, the communication updates, item 1A. Item 1B. Yes, Councillor from Town of Petawawa.
Thank you, Chair, and through you. Lacey, just wondering, the low bid of 14,000, is that a pretty good in terms of past history, in terms of pricing? And then just clarity on the tree tote thing, how you can not give them or give them back?
Sorry, you've jumped ahead of us. We're still on 1.
Sorry. I take back everything I said, and I'll say it again in a few minutes.
Not a problem. Item 1B. Item 1C. Item 1D. And now we're at item number 2, the harvest and renewal on Renfrew County Forest. And yes, Councillor from Town of Petawawa.
Thank you, Chair. I have a question about number 2. What I said before, Lacey.
Through you, Chair. Yes, the low bid is within the parameter of what we were expecting. The other companies we've not worked with on the Renfrew County Forest before. They're mostly in northern and western Canada, I believe. And the question about the totes, so there are 2 options when you buy small seedlings from the nursery. They can provide them in cardboard boxes that do not have to be returned. You have to pay for each box. Or they can pack them in these reusable totes, and then at the end of the tree plant, the totes have to be returned to the nursery, or you have to pay $25 per tote that's not returned. So that means another trip back to the nursery if you do use the totes, which is, less carbon footprint to use cardboard, but more to make another trip to the nursery. So the other quotes included whether or not they would return totes, and the Tamarack Reforestation provided a quote for both situations.
Any further comments or questions on item number 2? I see none. So then we will now move to the Real Estate Division report, and Mr. Lazarus.
Thank you, Chair, and through you. I just have 2 small items today. Information number 1, Real Estate Division capital under and over threshold projects attaches a summary report, including everything that was done up to last month. Biggest changes are 3 more construction contracts have been completed. And item number 2 is approval for a contract award 2024-27 LED lighting upgrades at Renfrew County Place. And it was awarded through bylaw 98-24 through delegation of authority for a contract that was approved under budget. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Lazarus. So going back to information item number 1, the real estate 2024 capital and capital under threshold projects. Comments, questions? Seeing none. Item number 2, the delegated authority approvals. Councillor from Town of Petawawa.
Thank you, Chair, and through you. And I got it right this time. Number 2, I have a question on number 2. Just for the delegated authority approval, I notice it says Etche Electric is from Petawawa, Ontario. Have they recently moved and I'm not aware of that, or are they still working out of Westmeath?
Thank you, Chair. And through you, their bid submission tender form, we believe said Petawawa, but I will confirm that. Thank you.
Councillor from Town of Arnprior.
Thank you, Chair. Just to confirm the lighting, that we have the same number of lights, just the different size of the bulb. Does that make sense?
Mr. Lazarus.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, it is the same number of lights. It is just the type of light the contractors proposed. Some were brighter than others, especially in the maintenance garage. We preferred brighter lights. Thank you.
Any other questions or comments? Seeing none, before we move to planning, I think we'll take a 10-minute break, and we will come back then at approximately 11:25. Welcome back, everybody. And we will now move to the Planning Division report. And Mr. Howarth, please.
Thank you, Chair. It should be fairly quick. Information item number 1 is an update with regards to subdivisions within the County of Renfrew. The first A and B are both in the Township of Greater Madawaska. These subdivisions are Granite Village, one's on the east side of the road of Norton Road, the other's on the west side of Norton Road. These subdivisions have been final approved, and we should see houses being built there soon. And item number C is a new application that we've received. This is in the town of Arnprior, and the proposal is for 272 units in total. And we have started processing this application in accordance with the Planning Act and have been providing the notices out to all the agencies and utilities, including the municipality, and publicly put the public notice requirements in accordance with the Planning Act up as well. And that concludes the information items. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Howarth. So again, information item number 1, the subdivision update, and 1A, Granite Village. 1B is the east side for, Granite Village east side, and Councillor from Greater Madawaska.
Yes, through you, Chair. I just want to thank the Planning Department for doing this, and Granite Village has had their open house, and their model home is there, and it's absolutely amazing, and how they've tied it in with the nature around it and the green area they have with it. So once again, thank you to the Planning Department for putting this through. So,
just a question, is there communal wastewater or water system there?
I'll take this from Mr. Howarth. No.
Thank you. And 1C is the application for the Campbell Lands subdivision. Comments, questions? Seeing none, we'll go back to Mr. Howarth for resolutions.
Thank you, Chair. I'll read the recommendation first and then provide some background after. So the recommendation is that the Development and Property Committee recommends that County Council receive the Climate Action Plan as amended, and that an ad hoc Climate Action Committee be formed to review the recommendations of the plan and provide possible implementation recommendations to committee.
Thank you for the recommendation. Do I have a mover and a seconder? Moved by Councillor from Town of Petawawa, second by Councillor from Greater Madawaska. And background, please.
Thank you, Chair. So earlier in this meeting, we did have that presentation by Ainsworth. And before I go too much further, I did want to recognize some of the efforts that some other county staff have provided into this process. So we did have Steve Ostenpenko from EMS. We had Lacey Roser Forrester, Kevin Raditz with our property division, and also Lee Perkins from our Director Lee Perkins from the Public Works Department. Have all provided valuable insight and helped provide all that background data with regards to our operations, our fleet, our buildings. So all that information assistance went to the consultant in their preparation of this plan. So the plan that we have in front of you and that was attached is the first draft of that report. We are hoping to have any comments and any other recommendations that committee may have to offer, or also is being circulated into our internal staff as well, see if there's any comments and recommendations there. And hopefully we can incorporate all of those feedback that we get into the report in time for County Council at the end of the month. So that's why we have the recommendation as amended in there. So we recognize that there are some still typos or grammatical things, and if there's any other action items or any other ideas to be included in that report, we're hoping to get those within the next week or so that they can be incorporated. The second part of the recommendation is ultimately this plan, if adopted by County Council, will need to be implemented. And the idea is that an ad hoc committee be created. So, and that ad hoc committee would look at this plan and then come forward with recommendations on that implementation, and we're looking at, how much, both from a budgetary perspective and also implementation side of it, how much of this plan can we implement, and then what are some of the benefits of proceeding with different of these action plans and the timing of those recommendations. And my last comment is we're excited to get this done. This will be the conclusion of our RFP with Ainsworth. So this is, we're excited to get this project done, and we're right at the finish line. So thank you very much, Chair.
Thank you for the background comments, questions. Councillor from Greater Madawaska, and then Laurentian Valley.
Thank you, through you, Chair. Mine is to the second part, the ad hoc committee for climate change. What would the structure of that be? Who would be involved? Would Ainsworth be part of it and just staff, or would you have council, or just trying to get an idea of the structure?
Mr. Davis or Mr. Kelly?
Thanks, Sharon, through you. So very early on, and that's the whole idea for this ad hoc committee. The terms of reference haven't been discussed or even talked about at this stage. And so when we, if this does get set up, we'll have to have a terms of reference and the makeup of how this will kind of roll out. We've envisioned different things about public involvement or not, but right now just is up in the air.
And Councillor from Laurentian Valley.
Thank you, Chair, and through you. One of the slides, I was sure, had natural gas and renewable natural gas. And I tried to find it on the slide to read it through again and make sure it was there. That's what I was reading. But by the time I even added the expansion, I still couldn't read it. So is there natural gas and renewable natural gas?
Mr. Howard?
Yeah, thank you, Chair. So I don't want to pretend to be an expert, but yes, there are two different types of gases. So the natural gas, that's typically what you'd see in the pipelines. You know, Enbridge would be delivering to a lot of places. And there's a different renewable natural gas could be, for example, at our agricultural and farm tour, we did a tour at the Clacy farm. And I would consider like that would be, they are a producer of methane, and then they are using manure and other inputs to create methane and then capture it and then burn that. And that's creating electricity and powering the grid. So that would be an example of using renewable natural gas for electricity production. And I believe there's also, you know, other like woody biomass and some other types of inputs that can be used to create those gases.
Thank you.
Ms. Rose, did you want to add to that?
Thank you, Chair. No, I was just going to add in the whole woody biomass addition. Most of the energy products that we currently use that are from non-renewables can be replicated through the use of woody biomass, and that is an emerging science, but is already used in other countries, so definitely something to keep in mind.
Thank you for that information. And Councillor from McNabb Braeside.
Thank you, Chair. So just to clarify, following up from my colleague from Greater Madawaska, so we're not recommending that this climate action plan be adopted yet. It's just to be received by council. I'm assuming that the thinking here is that the ad hoc committee would review the recommendations and get some numbers attached to it. And there's a lot of questions that remain. Some of them were answered by Ainsworth, but there's still questions that remain in terms of the practical considerations of the dollar values attached to the various recommendations and whatnot. So I would support this recommendation in that we're not ready to adopt it yet, and an ad hoc committee would be able to provide more clarity on the in the weeds and devil in the details.
Thank you for that. Any other comments? Seeing none, all in favor? Opposed? That's carried. Thank you.
Chair? Sorry.
Yes, go ahead.
So I just have another procedural question now that this has been done. What are the next steps for this ad hoc committee? Is this go to the striking committee, or are we forming it now, or what?
Has to go back to county council for approval, and then it would go to striking. So that brings us to item number 8, which is the approval of the report as a whole. And I have a recommendation that the Development and Property Department report be approved as presented. Do I have a mover and a seconder? Moved by Councillor from Laurentian Valley, seconded by Councillor from Town of Petawawa. Any further comments, questions? All in favor? And that's carried. Are there any written reports or representatives to external boards? Councillor from Town of Arnprior.
Thank you, Chair. On the 31st of October, I attended the CNL Environmental Stewardship Committee. Highlights, we had 6 presenters, and the most important information is CNL has now signed a MOU with Jamaica to explore technology to explore economic development of their reactor. Of note, the only reactor is that in the Caribbean. In partnership with a German firm, a new drug, Actinium 225, is now being developed to fight cancer, with any profits being split 50-50. CNL is now cleaning fuel for biomass and cement carbon. Ottawa River effluent issue is believed to be a steam condensation that convoluted the management of the chemicals used for sanitation. The remedy includes an equalization tank and to cover steam lines with barriers to control temperature. CNL will be the only site in Canada that will store high-level waste. April 2025, Canada will be the feature country for the World Waste Management Symposium being held in Phoenix, USA. And the NWMO advised that 22 sites were reviewed, with 2 sites, Wagamboon Lake, Ojibwe, terrible, Nation, Ignace area, Saugeen Ojibwe Nation, South Bruce, are being considered. Both the local Indigenous and local municipal government have to agree to the site or will not be recommended. And lastly, a Renfrew County and Pontiac resident will have received a book entitled Kids Contact. Of note, in the word search puzzle, there is no remediation. You'll never find that word in the puzzle. Thanks.
Thank you for that. Is there any new business? Mr. Lynch, your mic. So that brings us to our closed portion, and we do have one item for closed, and the recommendation that the Development and Property Committee, pursuant to Section 239 2C of the Municipal Act 2001, as amended, move into a closed meeting to discuss a proposed or pending acquisition or disposition of land by the municipality or local board, and it's in regards to the paramedic base. Do I have a mover and a seconder? Moved by Councillor from Town of Arnprior, second by Councillor from Horton. All in favor? Thank you. We will now move to closed. Oh, sorry, welcome back, everybody. We are finished with our closed, and at this time, I will need our next meeting will be Wednesday at County Council, Wednesday, November 27th, 2024, and I'll need a mover and a seconder to adjourn. Moved by Councillor from Petawawa, second by Councillor from McNabb-Braeside. All in favor? That's carried. Thank you. We are adjourned.